Welcome to Plain Talk, where we got a special treat for you. We have not one, but two Obans on the show today.
That's too many.
Treat is a word for it. Treat is a word.
Erin Oban, former state senator, former head of the North Dakota Rural Development Director for the state of North Dakota. Wow, my mind blanked there for a minute.
USD is what you're looking for.
United States Department of Agriculture. And now is an advocate for a new organization called North Dakotas for Public Schools, which is interesting. You know, we had a big debate in the last legislative session about education on multiple fronts. Obviously, we had the school choice or vouchers, whatever you want to call it, debate. We also had, school lunches was another hot debate. And we're always making a lot of policy around charter schools is something that got done, that got over the line. That's something that's going to be implemented in the coming years here. But part of that debate, is a lot of people talking about our public schools. And I think sometimes maybe people, because a lot of the population, we think, we're familiar with public schools, and most of us, just about everybody went to public schools or even private schools. That matters too. A lot of the voters, I would say at any given time, maybe the majority of the electorate, don't really have an active touch with their public schools in any given moment because they're not in school. And they don't necessarily have children in school. Maybe their children are grown up. Maybe they didn't have children, whatever the case may be. And my understanding of what this organization is going to do is maybe help link that knowledge gap through some advocacy and help people understand a little bit what's going on, what the challenges are, what the successes are in our public schools right now. Did I summarize that correctly, Erin? North Dakotans for Public Schools, that's what the goal is?
Yeah, I think you did summarize it pretty well, Rob. It actually, it's, I don't even know if I'd call it as an organization as much as a coalition of people. And it started during the legislative session, in part because of that recognition that there was a gap of ways to inform and engage people who don't belong to like an organization, who don't belong to an association. And to your point, who maybe either are past that point where they have a direct connection to public education or to their public schools in their community, who care about them, like who recognize how important public schools and public education is to the economy in their community, maybe especially in rural communities. As somebody who grew up in a really small town, schools are essentially the cornerstone of like everything that happens in small communities, but also in communities the size of Minot and Bismarck and Fargo. So we recognize that gap, and I had some time to fill, and a real strong interest in engaging in those conversations. Obviously, during the time that I spent in the legislature, I sat on the other side of those tables on the education committee the entire time. I've served as a classroom teacher. With rural development, I got to really get to know a lot of rural communities and see the pivotal role that public schools play. Oftentimes, they're the biggest employers. I mean, like, this is about, I think, so much bigger than the way we sometimes pigeonhole these conversations. And I wanted to engage, and we found a way to do it, and I think do it successfully. So now we want to continue to build on that momentum that was started.
Erin, I want to pigeonhole the conversation a little bit here. I mean, you were in the Senate. You obviously sat on the education committees. During the end of your time in the Senate, which I think 2018, we started to see, when were you done?
2022, I left. I ran re-election in 2018. And
just like I thought. I didn't do any research before this interview.
It's your wife, buddy.
Yeah. It's all a blur.
Relationship too.
It's all a blur. Towards the end of your time in the legislature, we started to see more of this sort of, I don't want to say attacks, but misinformation about public schools. I mean, we all remember conversations about furries and cat litter and what books are in the schools and indoctrination and all that kind of stuff. And I think last
critical
session,
race theory. I mean, a lot of the national narrative crap definitely was filtering into the conversations inside the halls of the legislature about public schools. Yeah.
But I think last session, it sort of was even more accelerated. We had some legislators, Keith Kempenick said the reason why we need money to go to private schools is because public schools are just indoctrinating kids. Like, so it's one thing, I think the vast majority of public supports public schools, but what will North Dakota for Public Schools do to educate legislators what's actually happening in schools, not just what they saw on Facebook? Because I think that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, like, I would like to put to use that experience I had as a legislator. I understand to quite a bit of the extent to which they as legislators receive their information. And we feel pretty strongly that the source of their information should come as locally as possible. So no matter what news organizations they're taking in, what podcasts they're listening to, we would really love it if when they hear something, true, false, or otherwise, they would like go to their own public schools in their communities and find out what is true and what is not. They would learn more. And so one of the things that we intend to help do as a coalition is facilitate more of that connection between our decision makers, so in this case, legislators, and the work that's happening. I received dozens of invitations as a legislator from, local businesses, from chambers of commerce, from hospitals, organizations that provide services, from veterans groups. I mean, you name it, we got invitations to go, from the energy sector and law enforcement, like literally from everybody. And sometimes I feel like we minimize the importance of extending that invitation from schools to open their doors to people like legislators, to invite them in and to sit down with them and talk about what's going well, what are challenges, how might you be a better partner, how might we be a better partner with the work that you're doing during the not just during the legislative session, but also, during that interim when there's a little bit more time to be thoughtful and to be in conversation and to get an understanding of really what is happening. Whenever I would go to those, and I would really accept as many invitations as I possibly could as a working person and as, a mom who also needed to be home sometimes. But I would go to as many as I could because I knew that I would make better decisions if I was more informed by the people who are doing the work and by the people that they are serving.
One of the things I think that's difficult about this is I do think is for as much as time I spend, complaining about obsession about culture war issues, it is valid for the public to be concerned about things like curriculum. Like it is
Of
valid
course.
for parents and for, even if you don't have kids in school, to be worried about or concerned with, I should say, maybe the better way to put it, what our schools are teaching. I mean, I think of something like the 1619 project, which was in vogue a few years ago and got very tied up in the critical race theory. I mean, it concerned me, the idea that we're going to teach a version of American history that says that our country was entirely organized around slavery. I don't think it's accurate. I think it's myopic. I think it's every bit as ideological and frankly stupid as the people who want to gloss over, the bad parts of our history. So I didn't want that taught in public schools, but I think the real struggle, and I think
That's also not where decisions are made, Rob. Like
right,
curriculum decisions are made at that local level.
because I was going to get to that point. I think what concerns me is when people hear about that happening, they perhaps rightfully check and see, well, is it happening in our schools? Is it happening in Minot or Bismarck or Grand Forks or Fargo? And I think the problem is that coinciding with another problem we're struggling with right now, where we've lost faith in institutions, when educators, superintendents, school boards, teachers, what have you, say, well, we're not doing that, they're not believed. So I think it's a problem where even when we put the information out and we say, because to me, I'm satisfied. I look at what my kids are bringing home from school and I'm satisfied that, okay, well, that sort of myopia they're talking about nationally, it's not happening here. This is not something I have to worry about. I think there's some people that they just don't believe it. And I'm wondering how, I mean, is that on your radar? Because I mean, it's one thing to facilitate these conversations, but there's a trust gap, and I don't know how to address it.
I mean, I'm not going to pretend like somehow, forming this coalition is going to solve all of those challenges. It reminds me a little bit of the conversations that I've heard you and Chad and other guests have about how a lot of these big frustrations and challenges in the world right now continue to get put on the backs of public schools to somehow solve. It's not going to just happen. But it's certainly not going to happen if we don't try to build stronger, more trusted relationships. And it is that is I think the word trust is exactly where that lies. No matter who or where I would go as a legislator, you fall back to the people that you trust when you're making decisions and when you're taking advice and when you're accepting what information is true and what information is not true. If we don't try to build more of that trust, we certainly aren't going to make progress in any of it.
So I think the other thing that part of these conversations are, if you're advocating for public schools, there's an assumption that you think public schools are perfect, and that, I love public schools, so therefore I don't think they can get better. I mean, you're not suggesting that there's a perfect game being pitched out there by public schools. And do you see this as an opportunity for public schools to also learn more from parents and from kids and elected officials about sort of ways to get better?
For the short amount of time that this coalition sort of has existed, and certainly for the extent to which I have been involved, for as much as I'm going to be involved, I will make clear that I don't think public schools are perfect. Schools are run by humans, and humans are imperfect. So we're not going to pretend like everything is the best it can be. We should have the same mindset, and that is like a growth mindset and always trying to improve, that we would hope anybody else would have. That's certainly where I'm at with public education. But ultimately, I also recognize what the whole purpose of public education was and is, and the role of public schools. And I think if you love something, apply it to anything. I love our public schools and I love public education. And so I believe that when you love something, you invest in it. You try to make it the best it can be for whatever the purpose of it is. And I think public education should be the best it can be for as many of the kids and families that it serves, for the thousands of educators and staff that it employs, and for the communities that they are a part of.
How much, speaking on that, that the public schools aren't perfect, and I love our public schools. I'm a product of the Minot public school system. My children go to Minot public schools. I think our public schools in Minot are great. That being said, I think when it comes to some of the cultural issues, people being obsessed about bathrooms or thinking that kids are requesting litter boxes in schools, a lot of that's absurd. Sometimes, though, I wonder if the schools have invited some of this by mission creep. And I think sometimes maybe it comes from the public school side as well, where we're going to use the schools as a mechanism to try to correct societal ills. And when we talk about putting things on the back of parents, right now we have a societal ill with cell phones. People, kids are spending too much time on screens. Well, we just passed a policy that put it on the back of the public schools to enforce screen time now during school hours. I worry about stuff like that. And I worry that when we invite those cultural things in, you're going to get the good with the bad. Maybe the screen time thing's not so bad. I'm a little skeptical that it's going to work all that well, but whatever, maybe it will. I don't think that's a bad thing to try. But I worry that when we invite school lunches, for instance, it's great that kids are getting school lunches during the school year, but now we're doing school lunches during the summer. Do you think mission creep in the public schools invites some of these problems, or maybe it would be better if they stayed in their lane?
I would suggest that the examples that you've provided and what you're saying of mission creep are not aligning. Like, the schools didn't ask for the state to create a cell phone ban.
They didn't?
To the best of my knowledge. I don't know that.
I don't know of any group that asked for it.
Well, one of the defenses of the policy was the teachers wanted this. They wanted the state to step in.
None
So
of the
what
education.
I heard the governor say multiple times is that teachers want parents want teachers to deal with it. Teachers want school, administrators to deal with it. Administrators want school boards to deal with it, and school board. I heard that, but really, Rob, no.
I don't think it's a power grab from the schools. Maybe I formulated the wrong way. I think parents, outsource a lot of parenting to schools.
I think that's true.
I think
Yes.
politicians, like the civics education test, or kids aren't. So we're gonna impose the civics. I think politicians do it, and I think the schools do it to a degree. I think the problem is everywhere. I think because we're all trying to use the schools as this tool to fix what we perceive as being wrong in the world, we've really created a problem for ourselves. And I would like to see a refocus.
I agree with you. I just don't know that I agree with the premise that public schools are asking for that.
I think sometimes they are.
Okay.
Sometimes they are. I mean, I get the notes home from my kids, telling me how to parent all the time, how to hug my kids and what I should be feeding them and all sorts of stuff. And I got to tell you, I mean, just philosophically, it rubs me the wrong way. Now, maybe it doesn't maybe it's just a cultural difference, but it really bothers me when parents tell me how to parent my child. And it creates, now, not for me, because again, I love my public schools. I get along great with the teachers, but it rubs me the wrong way. And
I get what, I get what you're saying. I do. I just don't know if, I worry often about, I think about the way Chad and I parent at home and how everything we're doing in our home does or does not affect the day that our kid has at school. And do I wish that schools, for whatever reason, they're feeling the need to send a note home that says, send your kids to bed at a decent hour?
And by the way, they weren't singling me out. This was like a generic.
I know, Rob. I don't think they're just sending a note home in Rob Port's children's backpacks to.
Although we do struggle with bedtime, I will admit that.
I just think that there are so many things that impact a kid's ability to be successful inside a school building that schools don't have any control over. None. And so I don't know how you solve that. I don't know how you solve that.
I don't know what the right solution is, but I feel like if you try to do something for somebody, then it's like they stop doing it. And I think when schools try to parent kids, you're creating the side effect is that some parents might stop parenting or might start expecting, well, if you're going to be the parents, then I'm going to expect this, that, and the other thing. And we create these weird expectations for our schools that I think ultimately hurt the schools.
It's a hard job.
Yeah, they have a hard job. There's no doubt. One of the things that as we're starting school, I think Fargo starting today, Minot Bismarck started last week. Rob and I talked about the emotionalness of raising children and when they stop needing you. The complaints and the thoughts that I'm hearing most about on social media are things that are really affecting people's individual lives right now, but maybe aren't like the thing that educates our kids, right? I mean, we're talking a lot about the cell phone ban and how that's being implemented. In Bismarck and Mandan, we're hearing a lot about the different start times that elementary kids are starting earlier, and transportation is changing and that kind of thing. So, and often I think our parents, rightfully so, this is dramatically affecting my life, right? The cell phone, all these different things that we can
wrote a column about it. Like we have different start times throughout the week. Like different days start at different times. My kids' 2 schools start at different times. It's a nightmare. And I will tell you, sometimes it feels like the schedule, whether it's the days off or the daily schedule, is written for the convenience of educators and not parents.
Right. And so I think that was one of the points I wanted to get to here is there's also that communication between parents and school districts. Rob, I think next week we're going to talk about the comment period at school board meetings and how that can be a little more useful. But I also think there's that engagement, right? What does that relationship between schools and parents look like? And what is the role of parents in that? I think, again, to Rob's point, I think schools want parents to function at a high level, and some parents don't have the skills they need, so they're trying to help them. But there has to be that communication. It's not just elected officials in schools, but it's also the students and the parents and the schools. And I mean, do you see a need for schools and teachers to do a better job of maybe figuring out how to engage in a different way beyond an email going out to parents?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this as a mom. Like, that's ultimately my role in North Dakotans for Public Schools. Like, all of the experiences I've had are great and helpful, but right now, like, I'm really doing this as a mom of a public school kid um who I want to make sure every other parent and kid in the same positions we are, or in, harder positions or an easier position, whatever, um, can learn from districts or school buildings that are really doing a bang up job. I have thought about what it was like when I was a kid, and that's usually our only
Right.
perspective in any of this is like, well, I know about schools because I've been a student, or I know about schools because I've been a parent. Well, I feel like, and part of this is the very different communities. I grew up in a town of 650 people, where it was the same school building, K through 12, one building. Same school building my parents went to when they were kids. Then me and my siblings went to when we were kids. And now all the kids growing up in and around Ray are also going to. That is a very different type of school system than Bismarck Public, with the highest student enrollment in the entire state. Um, I want to be able to learn from and then share out really positive examples of authentic ways schools are partnering with families. And I do think that goes beyond sending an email, updating the Power School app, um, having a bingo night. There has to be some way of learning communities or schools that are doing just a really good job, and can that be replicated in ways that work in your community or in your school? Because I do feel a little bit less invited into our kids' school than I think probably my parents were when we were kids.
And that's primarily safety measures, right?
Right. So there is this there's
now-
this trade-off all the time of, now we need to keep it under lock and key because of safety protocols. And then how do we ever, are we welcome to come in there as a parent?
One thing I will tell you as a parent, if I do have some feedback for my school, I almost feel hesitant to offer it because I don't want to be perceived as one of the parents who are showing up at school board meetings screaming at everybody. Like, I just want to be a parent. Like, it would work better for me if I didn't have to download and learn a new app to communicate with teachers every single year. And it
But
would
I
be
also know,
when you want to send me a link to a website, if you could just email it to me instead of requiring me to download the Parent Square app, and then you email me a link to a Google Doc that then inside the Google Doc has the link to the website you want me to go to.
mm-hmm.
Some of it, like, I want to be able to offer that feedback, but I'm also not a crazy parent who just wants to scream at you. Like, I know you're a human being. There's probably a reason you're doing this. From the user end, it's not great. But I'm wondering if we're feeling like parents are being invited in. I'm wondering that's why, because our educators are also getting abused by
right. I mean, I think that, again, this is where we're at in the world right now, and I really hate it. Like, our inability to just have critical, constructive adult conversations that don't start from like an accusatory tone or manner. I try. I don't always succeed with help me understand. Like, this is what I heard, and given it was from an 8-year-old's perspective, so it might be not quite the full truth, or it might be just his own little perspective on it. Help me understand maybe the bigger picture, and then how do we work together on resolving it, and also recognizing that every situation is not for the schools to resolve. Last year we had a really difficult little bullying situation where I reached out to the other parent. And I thought maybe we could try to have our children resolve this together without having to go to the school to solve all of our problems. Was it a little uncomfortable for me to send a message to that other mom and say, hey, this is what I heard happened at school. Can we talk about this? Can you figure out what you heard from your end? And I had no intention of even taking it to the school because I thought it was something that happened between two kids that wasn't the school's fault.
So, Erin, one of the goals of North Dakotans for Public Schools is to tell some success stories. And you had mentioned, from school district to school district. So as you're talking to people, I mean, are there any examples that pop in your head of teachers that are doing great there? I mean, there's so many, right? That's the other struggle that we have is these schools are like, yeah, this is what we do. And they don't talk about it because it's just what they do.
It is very much not our nature to brag about good things that are happening when that is what our job is. I think that is how educators feel. And sometimes they may not even realize it's something to brag about, but it's a really big deal to a kid and to their family when a light bulb goes off or when they start having a little bit of resilience, when they can respond to struggles a way where they take it on themselves. Like those are life-changing moments that teachers experience every day and don't ever talk about. To some extent, my perspective is still pretty limited to where I live and the way I engage. Last spring, I got invited in as a community member to be part of a panel of community members for senior projects up at Legacy High School. Like that's not where my kid go, but a history teacher who is unbelievably good at his job invites members of the community to come in, give feedback to these seniors from people who are not their teachers. And then I got to sit down on one of his classes and I left and literally asked him, like, is there a way I could just come in and sit in your class as a person who really wishes I had this kind of history teacher? And turn around and, August 1st or something, he was named North Dakota History Teacher of the Year. Like this stuff is happening all over. And as you guys know, just the negative catches on so much more than the positive. And we need to be people who spread good news, not just bad news.
I think and just to wrap up, I think one thing that's would be useful too is a clearinghouse of information, because I know Minot Public Schools really well. I mean, I went there. I have a daughter who's been graduated for years now. I have a daughter who's graduating this year, and I have a son in the 4th grade. So I know this school system really well. But I don't always know. I don't know what's going on. Even somebody who does what I do for a living, I don't necessarily know what's going on in the Bismarck Public Schools or Williston or wherever. So I think a clearinghouse for that kind of information would be well, and hopefully to foster a two-way street, because I do think that the relationship between schools and parents has deteriorated, and probably there's enough blame to go around for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Competitiveness or aggressiveness or whatever, that we got to get over some of that and get back to working together a little bit more.
I think too often, I also hear like this public schools are one size fits all. There's nothing one size fits all from classroom to classroom, from school to school. I mean, we have, schools are so much different than they were 25, 40 years ago if you're Chad, 25 if you're me.
Hey.
We have expanded opportunities in career and tech ed and in course offerings. Kids are earning associate's degrees before they ever graduate from high school. Schools are partnering with local businesses and organizations where kids are earning credit for relevant learning and hands-on experiences outside of a traditional classroom. These are ways that I really think, and certainly it's not all, but I would challenge us then to figure out what is the barrier for our school to look like that. Is it at the local level? Is it at the state level? Is it at the, and like go where those decisions are made. Be an active partner instead of, again, they're not perfect, but then what are we doing to make them a little bit closer to perfect for the kids in our communities that they serve?
Erin, where can people find more information about North
Oh,
Dakota
look at you
Public
just
Schools?
planting that right there.
Yeah,
Chapel
look at
Van.
me. Look at me. I've done this before.
So we have a website. It's ndforpublicschools.com. And we're also on Facebook. You can find us at ND for Public Schools. And right now we are also the ones behind the thousands of yard signs that are going up in lawns across North Dakota, just to spread a positive message. And it's actually doing what we were hoping it would do. We raised enough money, private money, to purchase those, and they're doing exactly what we were hoping they would do. We're getting messages saying, "Oh man, I love driving by that every day and just feeling a little better about what I do, where I go, where I'm dropping my kids off," and we're excited to just contribute a little bit of positivity too.
Erin, thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks, guys. Nice to be with you.